Extra, extra, we're back with another entry. I think we're going to change it up a little bit and start a little series. I'm going to call it Impetus for Destruction. White males in North America have been the root and cause and impetus of a lot of destruction. But what about his white female counterpart? In time past, the North American white female has been equally, if not more destructive. At Jaundice Journal, we're going to show you how. Since North America is in quarantine due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's only right and fitting that we talk about a white female who went to quarantine once, twice, and died in quarantine. We're talking about none other than Mary Mallon, aka Typhoid Mary. Mary Mallon, also known as Typhoid Mary, was an Irish-born cook believed to have infected 53 people, 3 of whom died with typhoid fever, and the first person in the United States identified as an asymptomatic carrier of the disease. Because she persisted in working as a cook, by which she exposed others to the disease, she was twice forcibly quarantined by authorities and died after a total of nearly 3 decades in isolation. Presumably, she was born with typhoid because her mother was infected during pregnancy. Interesting. Early life. Mary Mallon was born in 1869 in Cookstown, County Tyrone, in what is now Northern Ireland. At the age of 15, she migrated to the United States. She lived with her aunt and uncle for a time and worked as a maid, but eventually became a cook for affluent families. The glow up is real. From maid to a cook for rich families. Career. From 1900 to 1907, Mallon worked as a cook in the New York City area for 8 families, 7 of which contracted typhoid. In 1900, she worked for Mamaroneck, New York, where within 2 weeks of her employment, residents developed typhoid fever. In 1901, she moved to Manhattan, where members of the family for whom she worked developed fevers and diarrhea, and the laundress died. Mallon then went to work for a lawyer and left after 7 of the 8 people in that household became ill. Mary, in 7 years' time, you worked as a cook, feeding and infecting 7 of the 8 families that employed you. Within your first 2 weeks of working, you gave those people typhoid. In your first year of working, you moved to another city in New York, infected another family with fevers and diarrhea, and killed the laundry lady before moving on to be employed by a lawyer and leaving after 7 of 8 members of that family got sick. Mary, what in the world is wrong with you, lady? Don't you know you can't be doing people like this? Going from family to family, city to city, hurting folks? In June 1904, she was hired by a prosperous lawyer, Henry Gilsey. Within a week, the laundress was infected with typhoid, and soon 4 of the 7 servants were ill. No members of Gilsey's family were infected because they resided separately, and the servants lived in their own houses. The investigator, Dr. R.L. Wilson, concluded that the laundress had caused the outbreak, but failed to prove it. Immediately after the outbreak began, Mallon left and moved to Tuxedo Park, where she was hired by George Kessler. 2 weeks later, the laundress in his household was infected and taken to St. Joseph's Regional Medical Center, where her case of typhoid was the first in a long time. Typhoid, what you gonna do? Yeah, Mary, you developed yourself a bit of a pattern. Your employers get sick, you run away. You think your nickel's slick, but this investigator's got your petty change. Dr. R.L. Wilson, he couldn't prove that the laundress was the one carrying it, but you better look over your shoulder because they hot on your trail. They got the bloodhounds out for you. They on your scent. Typhoid, what you gonna do? In August 1906, Mallon took a position in Oyster Bay on Long Island with the family of a wealthy New York banker, Charles Henry Warren. Mallon went along with the Warrens when they rented a house in Oyster Bay for the summer of 1906. From August 27th to September 3rd, 6 of the 11 people in the family came down with typhoid fever. The disease at that time was unusual in Oyster Bay, according to 3 medical doctors who practiced there. The landlord, understanding that it would be impossible to rent a house with the reputation of typhoid, hired several independent experts to find the source of the infection. They took water samples from the pipes, faucets, toilets, and the cesspool, all of which were negative for typhoid. Mary, baby, you done moved with this banker, infected over half of his family, and brought an illness with you that's not known to be in the region of Oyster Bay. You've messed with the landlord's money. Now everybody is looking for you. Investigation. In late 1906, Mallon was hired by Walton Bowen, whose family lived on Park Avenue. Their maid got sick on January 23, 1907, and soon Charles Warren's only daughter got typhoid and died. This case helped to identify Mallon as the source of the infections. George Soper, an investigator hired by Warren after the outbreak in Oyster Bay, had been trying to determine the cause of typhoid outbreaks in well-to-do families when it was known that the disease typically struck in unsanitary environments. He discovered that a female Irish cook who fit the description he had been given was involved in all of the outbreaks. He was unable to locate her because she generally left after an outbreak began without giving a forwarding address. Soper then learned of an active outbreak in a penthouse on Park Avenue and discovered Mallon was the cook. 2 of the household servants were hospitalized, and the daughter of the family died of typhoid. We all remember the banker Mary used to work for, the one whose daughter that she killed. Well, that death helped to pinpoint Mary as the source of the infection. Even though more bodies are being added to the death toll where she's currently employed, a new investigator, George Soper, is hot on Mary's trail. Typhoid, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Soper first met Mallon in the kitchen of the Bowens and accused her of spreading the disease, though Soper himself recollected his behavior as, quote, as diplomatic as possible, end quote. He infuriated Mallon and she threatened him with a carving fork. When Mallon refused to give samples, Soper decided to compile a 5-year history of her employment. He found that of the 8 families that had hired Mallon as a cook, members of 7 claimed to have contracted typhoid fever. Then Soper found out where Mallon's lover lived and arranged a new meeting there. He took Dr. Raymond Hubler in an attempt to convince Mary to give them samples of urine and stool for analysis. Mallon again refused to cooperate, believing that typhoid was everywhere and that the outbreaks had happened because of contaminated food and water. At that time, the concept of healthy carriers was unknown, even to healthcare workers. Mary Mallon, my name is Investigator George Soper. We have reason to believe, oh snap, she got a carving fork. I just wanted some of your analysis from your urine and stool. We know you've been the one spreading this typhoid fever to these affluent families by cooking their food. You're killing them. You're responsible for some deaths and a bunch of sicknesses. Soper published his findings on June 15, 1907 in the Journal of the American Medical Association. He wrote, "It was found that the family changed cooks on August 4th. This was about 3 weeks before the typhoid epidemic broke out. The new cook, Mallon, remained in the family only a short time and left about 3 weeks after the outbreak occurred. Mallon was described as an Irish woman about 40 years of age, tall, heavy, single. She seemed to be in perfect health." I bet Investigator George Soper's journal looked like Sebastian's journal on that movie Cruel Intentions. Yes, I confronted her about killing all those people and infecting all of those people and running away, and she pulled a carving fork on me. First quarantine, 1907 through 1910. Mary Mallon, foreground, in a hospital bed. Soper notified the New York City Health Department, whose investigators realized that Mallon was a typhoid carrier. Under sections 1169 and 1170 of the Greater New York Charter, Mallon was arrested as a public health threat. She was forced into an ambulance by 5 policemen and Dr. Josephine Baker, who at some point had to sit on Mallon to restrain her. Mallon was transported to the Willard Parker Hospital, where she was restrained and forced to give samples. For 4 days, she wasn't even allowed to get up and use the bathroom on her own. The massive amounts of typhoid bacteria that were discovered in her stool samples indicated that the infection center was in her gallbladder. Under questioning, Mallon admitted that she almost never washed her hands. This was not unusual at the time. The germ theory of disease still was not fully accepted. There she is. Get her. That's Mary Mallon. Sit on her. Don't let her move. Don't let her run away this time. Get her. Put her in the ambulance. Ask her, since she's been cooking food for these rich families, if she's been washing her hands. I doubt it. All of those people getting sick and getting diarrhea and dying. Get her. And don't forget the urine and stool samples. On March 19th, 1907, Mary was sentenced to quarantine on North Brother Island. While quarantined, she gave stool and urine samples 3 times per week. Authorities suggested removing her gallbladder, but she refused because she did not believe she carried the disease. At the time, gallbladder removal was dangerous, and people had died from the procedure. Mallon was also unwilling to stop working as a cook, a job that earned her more money than any other. Having no home of her own, she was always on the verge of poverty. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle, even though I probably am. But anyway, that's not the point. You almost never wash your hands, and you still want to cook food for rich people? You still don't think you have the disease, but everywhere you worked at, people died. After Soper's publication in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Mary attracted extensive media attention and received the nickname Typhoid Mary. Later, in a textbook that defined typhoid fever, she again was called Typhoid Mary. Soper visited Mallon in quarantine, telling her he would write a book and give her part of the royalties. She angrily rejected his proposal and locked herself in the bathroom until he left. She hated the nickname and wrote in a letter to her lawyer, "I wonder how the said Dr. William H. Park would like to be insulted and put in the journal and call him or his wife Typhoid William Park." What? Split the royalties? When I come out of this bathroom, you better be gone, you sidewalk sissy. You're lucky I ain't got my carving knife on me. Mallon herself never believed that she was a carrier. With the help of a friend, she sent several samples to an independent New York laboratory. All came back negative for typhoid. On North Brother Island, almost a quarter of her analysis from March 1907 through June 1909 were also negative. After 2 years and 11 months of Mallon's quarantine, Eugene H. Porter, the New York State Commissioner of Health, decided that disease carriers should no longer be kept in isolation and that Mallon could be freed if she agreed to stop working as a cook and take reasonable steps to avoid transmitting typhoid to others. On February 19, 1910, Mallon said that she was prepared to change her occupation, that of a cook, and would give assurance by affidavit that she would, upon her release, take such hygienic precautions as would protect those with whom she came in contact from infection. She was released from quarantine and returned to the mainland. Now, I know they call me Typhoid Mary in those news journals and news articles, but trust me, I'm fine. All my results came back negative. Is anybody hungry? Release and second quarantine, 1915 through 1938. Poster depiction of Typhoid Mary. Upon her release, Mallon was given a job as a laundress, which paid less than cooking, only $20 per month instead of $50. At some point, she wounded her arm, the wound became infected, and she could not work at all for 6 months. After several unsuccessful years, she started cooking again. She used fake surnames like Brishoff or Brown and took jobs as a cook against the explicit instructions of health authorities. No agencies that hired servants for upscale families will offer her employment, so for the next 5 years, she moved to the mass sector. She worked in a number of kitchens in restaurants, hotels, and spa centers. Almost wherever she worked, there were outbreaks of typhoid. However, she changed jobs frequently, and Soper was unable to find her. This woman has lost her ever-loving mind. She signed an affidavit and told us her cooking days was behind her. And what she do? Go right back to cooking. She said that she would wash her hands and take every precaution not to infect those she came in contact with. And what she do? She got them sick and she fled. But I'm on her heels. In 1915, Mallon started working at Sloan Hospital for Women in New York City. Soon, 25 people were infected and 2 died. The head obstetrician, Dr. Edward B. Cragen, called Soper and asked him to help in the investigation. Soper identified Mallon from the servants' verbal descriptions and also by her handwriting. Mallon again fled, but the police were able to find and arrest her when she took food to a friend on Long Island. Mallon was returned to quarantine on North Brother Island on March 27, 1915. What in tarnation? This is the true definition of monkey business. You mean to tell me, as sick as you are and everything that you've been through, that you go work at a hospital and get 25 people in there sick, kill 2 of them? Oh man, you need to go back into quarantine on North Brother Island. Little is known about her life during the second quarantine. She remained on North Brother Island for more than 23 years. The authorities gave her a private 1-story cottage. Since 1918, she was allowed 1-day trips to mainland. In 1925, Dr. Alexandra Plowska came to the island for internship. She organized a laboratory on the 2nd floor of the chapel and offered Mallon the technician's job. Mallon washed bottles, did recordings, and prepared glasses for pathologists. That's the end of the story and also the end of today's entry. Let me know what you think in the comment section because I value your opinion. What do you think about Typhoid Mary? Is she just like her white male counterpart in North America, breaking promises, hurting lots of people? Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're feeling generous, you could share this video and get the message out and just share the content. I don't mind. But until next time, this has been an entry at Jonda's Journal. We're going to do our best to keep them coming, keep more stories like this going. Jump in the comment section and tell me if you like the way I told today's story. Like I said, I'll say it again. I value you guys' opinion. Let me know, and I'll know the do's and don'ts of what you like and what you don't like. Until next time, peace.